In the day's other headlines, President Trump warned his fellow Republicans today that if they don't put in a strong showing in this year's midterm elections, he'll be impeached. Mr. Trump was addressing a meeting of GOP lawmakers at the recently renamed Kennedy Center. He described Democrats as mean and smart, highlighting what he sees as the stakes in the upcoming vote.
Hey world, Adam is here. Okay, so let me paint you a picture that changes absolutely everything about how you're understanding what's unfolding in Washington right now. If we lose the midterms, they will impeach me.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
Not, they might try. Not, they'll make noise. Not, they'll play politics. They will impeach me. As in, it's happening. As in, he's already done the math. As in, the man sitting in the Oval Office is looking at his own hand-picked loyalists and telling them straight up that his time in power has an expiration date, and that date is written on a ballot box.
Mr. Speaker, and still I rise to note that tonight I have called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America. He is an abuser of presidential power. He has called for the execution of members of the House of Representatives, of this very House. He has demeaned members of the judiciary. He has conducted himself in office such that persons are now threatening members of the judiciary, threatening members of the House of Representatives, threatening members of the Senate. Donald John Trump, by his conduct, merits impeachment, trial, and conviction in the Senate of the United States of America, and should never hold any office of public trust ever again.
Think about what that statement actually reveals. You don't warn your own people that impeachment is coming if you believe you're invincible. You don't put that prediction on the record if your internal polling shows smooth sailing. That moment, that one sentence in a private room full of House Republicans, is the crack in the armor.
Is that what the Democrats really want? Another impeachment?
Look, there is so much bitter anti-Trump feeling. You showed it in your previous segment where you have Elizabeth Warren who's getting what she asked for. And she still has to attack Trump because even when he does what she wants, it's not good enough. So I think you've got this core group of Democrats who get up every morning and they know the answer is impeach Trump. They don't know what the question is, but they know what the answer is. Well, the average American actually would like us to move beyond that kind of stuff. They'd like us to focus on affordability, on getting the economy growing, on solving the kind of problems that are real in everyday lives, including education, the cost of healthcare. These things are real. And I think the more the Democrats get sucked into pure politics, the weaker their case will be when you get around to the 2026 election.
That's the instant where the performance of dominance slips and the real political calculation underneath becomes visible for anyone paying attention. And what does that calculation show? A president who knows, based on real data his team is feeding him, that a 5-seat House majority might as well be made of tissue paper in a rainstorm. A president who understands that one bad election cycle doesn't just shift the balance, it erases his protection entirely. A president who is looking at the same midterm history every political analyst is looking at and realizing that the winds are not blowing in his direction.
Following the unrest, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, as Carrie mentioned, are calling for the removal of President Trump. Some say he incited the violence, and besides the impeachment, they also want to invoke that 25th Amendment.
It really is not designed to remove a president for the reasons that people are thinking of now. Those reasons are really designed more for impeachment.
And we talked with a local professor about what could happen. Now, the 25th Amendment provides the procedures for replacing the president or vice president in the event of death, removal, resignation, or incapacitation. There's also a clause that addresses if a president could become physically or mentally unable to perform their duties. In that circumstance, the vice president would assume those powers.
Now here's the part that should make your head spin. On the exact same day Trump is privately warning his allies about impeachment, multiple United States senators and House members are standing in front of cameras publicly calling for his removal under the 25th Amendment, not grumbling behind closed doors, not whispering to reporters on background, standing on the record by name, saying this man should not be in the Oval Office. And what's their evidence? The Greenland push, a territory belonging to a NATO ally that Trump keeps talking about acquiring like it's a piece of real estate. The Nobel Prize obsession, statements about no longer feeling compelled to focus on peace if he doesn't get the award he believes he deserves. Foreign policy volatility that lawmakers are characterizing not as strategic maneuvering, but as evidence of a man detached from reality. This is not Congress quietly debating policy differences. This is Congress publicly, loudly, through multiple constitutional mechanisms simultaneously, saying the president is unfit. And the president is privately telling his own people that he thinks they're right about where the political trajectory is headed. We are going to break down exactly what is happening right now. The impeachment math that keeps Trump up at night. The 25th Amendment mechanics that could move faster than an election, the specific conduct generating the fitness arguments, and the political scenario that turns all of this from rhetoric into reality. Stay with me. Here's what makes this moment genuinely different from every previous round of impeachment talk. In the past, removal was always mathematically impossible. The numbers weren't close, the protections were too thick, the political alliances too solid. But right now, three things are happening at the same time that have never all been true before. First, the removal calls are coming through multiple channels at once. Formal impeachment articles being drafted, not just floated, actually written. Explicit 25th Amendment advocacy from named senators and representatives, people whose words carry constitutional weight. Public pressure on specific cabinet members to treat Section 4 as an active duty rather than a theoretical option. Second, the political math for at least one of those mechanisms is genuinely close. A 5-seat House majority in a midterm cycle where the party holding the White House historically loses seats. And a president who is so aware of that fragility that he's warning his own people about it directly. That's not campaign rhetoric. That's a man reading the same polls you're reading and drawing the same conclusions. Third, the conduct generating these calls is not old scandal being recycled. It's happening right now. The Greenland situation, the Nobel statements, the foreign policy moves that lawmakers are calling out not as past mistakes, but as present, ongoing evidence of unfitness. When all three of those things are true simultaneously, multiple constitutional tracks, fragile math, ongoing behavior, the conversation stops being political theater and starts being structurally serious. And here's the historical context that matters. This is not the first time Congress has moved toward the 25th Amendment with this president. January 2021, immediately after the Capitol attack, the House of Representatives passed a formal resolution calling on the vice president to invoke Section 4 and remove Trump from office. That wasn't a statement from a few members. That was a vote of the full chamber. A majority of the House went on record saying the 25th Amendment was the appropriate response. The vice president at the time declined to act, but the vote happened. The precedent is set. The argument has already been formally endorsed. What's happening now is that same argument being made again, based on new conduct that lawmakers are characterizing as equally alarming as what triggered the 2021 resolution. Let's dig into what's actually driving these removal calls, because there are three distinct storylines here, and understanding all three together is the only way to see the full picture. First, the Greenland situation and the mental fitness narrative. Trump's push to acquire Greenland from Denmark, a NATO ally, has been consistent and aggressive. He says there's no going back on it. He won't rule out military options. European officials are characterizing his statements as threatening and destabilizing. And alongside that, the Nobel Prize comments, statements about no longer feeling bound to pursue peace if he doesn't get the award, have generated a specific wave of fitness commentary. Governor J.B. Pritzker publicly characterized Trump's behavior as evidence he's detached from reality and dangerous. Multiple Democratic members posted explicit 25th Amendment calls specifically in response to the Nobel comments. Newsweek documented lawmakers using the phrase mentally ill to describe their response. Now, let's be precise. Democratic politicians calling a Republican president mentally ill is politically motivated. It serves their interests. But the constitutional significance of elected officials making those statements publicly, on the record, based on specific current behavior, is real regardless of motivation. It establishes a documented congressional record of unfitness claims that forms the factual basis for any 25th Amendment proceeding if the cabinet ever chose to initiate one. And the Venezuela action adds a war powers dimension. When a president uses military force without congressional authorization, that raises a separate constitutional question about whether the executive is operating within its legal authority. That's directly relevant to impeachment as a remedy for presidential overreach. The more than 80 House Democrats backing impeachment articles against cabinet officials like DHS Secretary Christine Noem, alongside the pressure on Trump himself, reflects a strategy of building documented records across multiple fronts simultaneously. Now let's talk about the impeachment math, because this is the most concrete and quantifiable element of the entire conversation. Republicans hold a 5-seat majority, 5 seats in a chamber of 435. That means 3 defections on any given vote, or a handful of vacancies at the wrong moment, erases the majority entirely. Historical midterm patterns are not favorable to the party holding the White House. The specific environment heading into 2026, approval numbers under pressure from multiple directions, legal cases, foreign policy volatility, economic consequences, adds headwinds that analysts are watching carefully. Trump is watching those same numbers. His January warning to House Republicans was not the statement of a confident president. It was the statement of a president calculating the realistic probability of a House flip and communicating that calculation directly to the people whose political survival depends on it. When Trump says, "If we lose, they will impeach me," he's acknowledging that losing is real enough to plan around, and he's acknowledging that impeachment is the certain consequence. The specific arithmetic once the House flips is worth examining. House impeachment requires only a simple majority, which a Democratic House could provide on a party line vote. Senate conviction requires 2/3, which means 17 Republican senators would need to join all Democrats. That threshold hasn't been met in previous impeachments, but the political environment in 2026, after 2 years of conduct that has generated bipartisan judicial concern, is going to look different. Republican senators facing their own re-election calculations in an environment where Trump's approval is declining and the documented record of constitutional overreach is extensive may find the calculus different. That doesn't mean conviction is certain. It means it's less certain than historical patterns would suggest. Now, the cabinet pressure. The 25th Amendment track is more immediately actionable than impeachment because it doesn't require winning an election first. It requires convincing the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to sign a document. The senators and representatives publicly calling on Vance and the cabinet to act are specifically trying to create the political conditions under which that document becomes thinkable. The mechanics are established. Vice President plus majority cabinet declaration, presidential challenge, 21-day congressional resolution period, 2/3 requirement for sustained removal. What the current advocacy is doing, through public statements, through media coverage framing cabinet members as potential constitutional actors, is applying political and reputational pressure that makes their continued inaction a documented and visible choice with consequences. Every public call for Vance to act, every statement that cabinet secretaries have a constitutional duty to invoke Section 4 adds to the growing record of what information was available and what arguments were made before they chose not to act. Here's the bottom line. 4 clear points. 1. Trump's own impeachment warning to House Republicans is the most important data point in the entire conversation. It represents a presidential acknowledgement in private communication to his own allies that the political conditions for impeachment are closer than his public posture suggests. When he warns the very people whose votes protect him, he's telling them that their majority is his most essential protection and that the stakes of 2026 are about his personal survival. 2. The convergence of multiple constitutional mechanisms being pursued simultaneously, impeachment articles, 25th Amendment calls, formal resolutions, represents a strategic approach that builds redundant pressure across multiple pathways. Even if no single channel immediately produces removal, each generates documented records, public statements, congressional filings, and media coverage that contributes to the overall political narrative about fitness and the legitimacy of continued tenure. 3. The mental fitness framing, while partly political strategy, serves a specific constitutional function in the 25th Amendment context. Impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors, intentional wrongdoing. The 25th Amendment is for inability, a situation where the president cannot discharge duties regardless of intent. Lawmakers making mental fitness arguments about Greenland and the Nobel comments are specifically trying to make the 25th Amendment case, arguing not just bad actions but deteriorated judgment to the point where the inability standard applies. 4. The 2026 midterms are the single most consequential pending event. A Democratic House majority converts impeachment from impossibility to near certainty given the documented record and political incentives. Every poll of competitive districts, every candidate recruitment decision, every fundraising report is a data point in predicting whether that majority flip happens. Every foreign policy development, Greenland, Venezuela, any additional unilateral action, either produces more crisis that intensifies pressure or resolves in ways that reduce urgency. So here's what you need to carry away from everything we covered. Trump himself warned his own House Republican allies that if they lose the midterms, he will be impeached. 5-seat majority. Historical headwinds. A president acknowledging privately that the conditions for impeachment are close enough to plan around. Simultaneously, senators and House members are publicly calling for 25th Amendment removal, citing current conduct as evidence of unfitness. More than 80 House members are backing impeachment articles against cabinet officials. The 2021 precedent of a full House resolution calling for 25th Amendment invocation establishes that the mechanism has already been formally endorsed by a House majority. The convergence of impeachment pressure, 25th Amendment advocacy, cabinet accountability arguments, and Trump's own acknowledgement of the risk creates a removal conversation that is structurally more serious than any previous round. The Capitol is not literally on fire, but the constitutional temperature inside it is running hotter than it has ever run. And the political math that keeps it from boiling over is a 5-seat margin that Trump himself is telling you he is not confident will survive. Stay tuned. Every midterm development, every foreign policy crisis, every court ruling, every poll is another piece of this picture. We're going to be right here covering all of it. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Does Vance ever actually pull that trigger, or does it all come down to November? I want to hear from you.